Okay, welcome, and for our latest video we're going to look and get at and give you tips about how to buy and what to look for in a second-hand RS200. Why are we producing this? Very popular class, big demand for them at the moment. We've actually probably, no exaggeration here, we've probably had a third of the UK fleet through our hands at some stage in the last 23 years, 24 years, because either I sold them when I was a dealer for the first 6 years, brand new. We've refurbished and sold on second-hand boats, or we've done repair work on them. So actually, we've probably seen most things that could go wrong with an RS200, and that's what the idea of this is, to pass on those tips to you. We're extremely lucky that the 200, very, very, very good design by, again, the genius of Phil Morrison, very well developed by RS and the builders RMW in the early days. Very rugged, extremely well built. You can have a lot of confidence about buying a second-hand old boat. This happens to be one used by one of the forces. It's number 386. It's actually built in 99. It's over 20 years old, 22, 23 years old. So we're going to use this as an example of what to look for in the boat. When you go to look at a second-hand boat, be prepared to take your time to go through the boat properly. And what we're going to do now is we're going to literally start at the front, work our way back, and we'll actually give you the tips of what to look for that can go wrong with the boat. So the first thing to do when looking at a boat is actually come and check the number, and it actually is what it says in the advert. And actually, I got the number of this boat wrong. In all RSs, they're engraved, drilled into the back of the boat here between the rudder fittings. And this one is actually 566. It's actually a slightly newer boat than I actually thought. And also, the point about this is quite often when people buy a second-hand main, it's got the wrong cell number on it. And if they haven't changed it, sometimes the number on the cell doesn't equal this. And this is the actual definitive, this is the number of the boat. The hidden number down here, amongst other things, tells us it's built in Great Britain by LDC, the mould number, but the last two digits here give you the year it was built, and in this case it was built in 2000. So this is actually a 21 to 22 year old boat. So let's start at the very front of the boat. First thing to look at is the pole system. So first of all, grab the launch line and do what you would be trying to do with hoisting the kite, and then pull it out. Great, that actually came out nice and easily, so that will tell me that the pole's probably straight. I also got that very nice clunk sound where it actually hit the rivet here, so that's fully extended. So I'm just going to quickly look down the pole. Yeah, that is straight, so that's operating well, and it also hasn't got that many scratch marks on it. So again, to me that's actually a good pole, that's actually fine. If it's not doing that, might very well the inner pole is actually bent too much. Sometimes you can straighten them, but if you can't, you're talking about the easiest thing is just to replace the whole pole, and that's actually a bit of cost. I mean, that's £200 worth of kit, so that's why it's really important. Then we're going to look at how it's anchored. So at the front here there's a U-bolt holding this down, and I can see here there is some very small scale gel little crack in here. Don't get too carried away by this, that isn't too big an issue. It is just little gel fractures, and they will reappear. So again, that's okay, I'm happy about that. I'll be far more concerned if this inner piece here is lifting, particularly if the screws aren't held in properly. That is bad news, because that actually could suggest there's something wrong with the wooden pad built into the boat underneath. In a similar way, also look at the forestay jib attachment. That's really solid, that's really good. The next immediate thing to look at is the chute here and the sock. And this one is a fairly classic big knot chute. They aren't actually brilliantly secured here, and this is a good example of one that's actually been through the wars. One you can actually see there's quite a bit of actual structure missing here, and they've just stuck in what we call bubble gum filler into it, which looks horrible. These screws are also not flush. There's actually a gap underneath them, and that's not good, because in actual fact the spinnaker will regularly catch on that as it's being dropped, and actually could damp. That's what put pinpricks on it. So with this one, I would be wanting to take this chute off completely, probably actually replace the chute because of how badly this is cracked up, and redo these holes. It's not a difficult job, but again, it's one that should be reflected in the price of the boat. The other problem with the chute is there is an awful lot of grooves cut into here, which is a very common thing when you're trying to drop the kite. You're pulling away and it re-cleats itself, and you end up trying to pull like mad, and all you do is end up cutting these grooves into here. It's also cracked here, which again would further suggest to me we might actually have to replace the chute in the pretty short term. Next area we're looking at, which is a very important area, is the shroud U-bolt. This goes right through the hole and it's got a backing plate. This is a good one considering how old it is. There is actually no cracking emanating from this shroud U-bolt, so that's a really good sign. You will see some minor gel cracking coming out from here. If it's just sort of fairly small scale hairline stuff, not too bad. But if I see some really significant cracks coming out from here, that actually slightly worries me, because this is such a structural area of the boat. And in 200s, once it starts getting breezy, we do put serious rig tension on here. The two minor things to look out for: this U-bolt, the shroud adjuster here, that's good. We'll look at the other side in a minute because that's really bent. Quickly check the ratchet. Is it working? Well, this isn't even a ratchet. This is a plain, just a standard ball bearing block. They really need ratchets on here, because the poor crew's going to actually have, when the kite's under real load, is going to be a problem. So I think if I was buying this boat, I would want that replaced, and I would agree that with the price, with the owner. The other quickly thing to look at here is these things here. This is just fairly standard. Use your boat, little knocks and bashes you get on the gunnel. That's not going to cause the boat any ill harm over any length of time. And it's basically, if you're buying a €20 boat, that's the sort of thing I would expect to see. If somebody was asking £6,000 for a boat on a €3-4 boat, then basically I would actually say to them, get that fixed before you sell the boat. Quick look at the sock. This actually looks quite newish sock, but immediately I'm drawn to this here. As you can see, this is the classic trying to pull the spinnaker down, and actually, in fact, again, partly because it's not coming down very quickly and easily, the crew's pulling away and the halyard is sawing its way through there. That actually can be repaired by any good sail repairer, but again, if I was buying this boat, either I'm going to get this in at a pretty good price, or I'm going to say to them, you get it fixed before I buy the boat. The other thing wrong here is the sock isn't anchored at the back. This should be underneath this grab rail and trapped. And again, it's a very straightforward thing to do, but it isn't clever. And as I can see also, this shock cord is completely gone. Actually, nothing unusual in that. The shock cord is really cheap. But if I look around the boat, most of the shock cord in this boat needs replacing. Next thing to move into is the mast step. And again, a really important area on the boat. So grab hold of it and see if you can move it. And in fact, this is great. That is rock solid. So that's really good. What can happen in 200s is you get a bit of movement going on here, and actually, in fact, some of these screws, there's 4 screw heads in here, they can actually shear, and you can have too much movement in them. It's a bit of a bugger of a job, because you've got to take the entire mast step off, then get the screw that is sheared, that's still left in there, out, and fill the holes. It's not a difficult job. It's actually straightforward for us as boat repairers. But again, it's one of those things, if you're buying a boat, I would actually turn around to the owner and say, yeah, I'll buy the boat, you get that sorted first properly. So grab out of that, really move it around. Have a look at these, all the anchor points here, and make sure that the bolt that's across here isn't shearing, because otherwise this whole stuff comes off. But they all look in good order. They're at the back of the pole. There's a bolt goes through the back of the pole down into the inside to hold the back of the pole down. So again, make sure, really pull on that, and that's brilliant. That's anchored properly. Let's just have a quick look at this pulley here. Yeah, that's the pulley that the spinnaker is going to go through, go forward to the pole and back again. That's the one that takes a lot of load. If that's not working properly, the poor crew's going to really struggle hoisting the kite. So check that. Spin lock, that looks good. Yep, that works properly. just quickly look at the ropes. Yeah, they're all in good nick. The one thing you really have to do is actually take the hatch out, and this is going to be quite difficult to actually see on the video, but there's a wooden bulkhead that runs across the boat under the shrouds, both sides, and then there's a support piece comes forward underneath the mast. They're wooden, and if quite often can happen, you end up with moisture stuck in the front tank and you don't dry it out. You leave the bow of the boat up in the edge, the water inside drains out. You end up with a lot of water sat around the wood, and that is a catastrophic failure if those go rotten. So put your hand in here and actually really check all around the wood at the bottom. Make sure it's not damp and it's not getting rotten. And this is a good one, so this is all right. But we'll show you photographs of ones that actually have gone wrong. That's good. The other one you can actually get to is the underside of the bolt for here. Easily get through the back of that, and that's actually, again, that's properly secured, so I'm really quite pleased about that. So that's actually a no worry issue. Okay, so let's go into the crew cockpit area. First off, I can see here is the tow straps lying on the floor, which is actually useless. There should be actually shock cord running through this tow strap holding it up, so you've obviously got to replace that. Very small scale thing, easy to do, but before you go sailing, it's going to have to be done. Shock cord under here is there, but it looks useless. But the big thing you want to check for in the crew cockpit area is 200s in particular, and the 4s are the same, are quite prone to getting gel cracking in the cockpit area, and particularly you want to look around here at the edge of the non-slip pattern. This is actually surprisingly good. I mean, it's actually brilliant. There is not a hint of a crack there. Quite a few of this is actually just gel cracking, simply because the crew, lot standing up here, a lot of pushing and moving around, and that's just a stress. So this actually would suggest to me this boat is really solid and is well built. If there's excessive amount of cracking here, you might have to get it looked into. Similarly around the edge of the centerboard case, but the one I'm really properly interested in is down the centre of here, and I'm going to grab hold of the tow straps and pull like hell on them, and in actual fact that's brilliant. There's a stringer that runs underneath the cockpit floor to support the hole on the cockpit, that runs literally down here through the centre of the tow straps down to there, all the way to the back, and that is a really integral part of the strength of the boat. And what can happen in other words, is that in actual fact the stringer doesn't break, but the bond between the underside of the cockpit floor and the stringer goes, and you can actually make the cockpit floor move. And I'm going with all my strength on that, and the floor isn't moving. So that's really good. That's really solid. What if you can see a lot of movement, or you can actually hear it, is you can see cracking. Be quite careful about the boat. Fixing that is quite an expense. We would literally have to cut holes in the hull to get in there to rebond the stringer on. Don't get too carried away with this. There are now nearly 2,200s out there, and we don't do that many a year. We're only sort of fixing 2 a year, but it is quite a cost to when you come, if you end up one of those boats. Next, we'll get a quick look at is thwart. This is an add-on piece put in afterwards. It's only held in by 6 screws, and if we have to repair a thwart, we quite often literally just take the whole thing out. What I'm looking for here is cracking, significant cracking, and that is quite often can be caused by somebody falling over in the boat and landing very heavily, or standing on it to get in and out the boat, and that's a big no-no. This has actually got some very hairline cracks, which you can see in the photograph we're showing you now in the gel. That's fine, don't worry about those. That's just stress in the gel. That isn't actually in the glass fibre underneath, and I'm checking now for that. So again, what we're looking for is big cracks that actually, if you press down on there, actually move. This is fine as a thwart, so let's move on to the next area of the boat, and we're going to now move to the helms cockpit area. Okay, helms tend to be bigger. There can
normal convention is the helms quite often are bigger, heavier than the crew, and if they're anything like me, they're more cumbersome and fall around. So again, I'm looking for cracking on the right out here on the edge of the non-slip. Well, this boat's great. This is good. I'm looking again, and there's nothing down, no stress cracking appearing at all in this cockpit floor. That actually gives me a lot of confidence about this boat and the longevity of it. So the next area I'm going to look at is, now we're actually towards the back of the boat, is look at the centre of this spine built into here, and particularly if you have to move the tow straps out of the way, and look here. This is a particularly unique thing to 200s. If you run aground with the rudder full down, with it bolted, with it rope hard on, okay, the rudder doesn't give way, the rope doesn't give way, you end up with a lot of push on the top of the rudder turret, which gets transmitted to here. In the centre of here is what's called woven roving core, but they can't take it round the curve, so it ends here, so it goes to the weakest point. And they quite often, you can see 200s with cracks here, and it's actually not tonal. Don't get too preoccupied. Again, it's a really simple repair for good boat repairers, and we're actually showing you photographs of what they look like. But again, it can be 150 to 300 pounds of cost to get those fixed, and that's got to be very much borne out in the price of the boat. So move the tow straps out of the way, have a good look in this area. The next really important area to look at is the whole of the back here and the rudder fittings. Make sure that there's no play in movement, and these are really good, these are excellent, and I'm looking to see if I've got stress fracturing coming out from the rudder fitting, which again would actually happen if you run aground at speed with the rudder down. It can cause that, and this is really good. If you're at all worried, undo the hatch and look in through here, and you can see the back of the rudder fittings, and there's a wooden block built into the whole of the transom here that gives real strength. And what you're looking for, if you've got movement here, is what's it like on the inside. Okay, and this looks really quite good. 200s are very prone to getting damage on this lip. It's actually a design quirk of the boat that, in actual fact, when you take the boat off the road trailer, you quite often ground the boat if you're not really careful, and that can damage this. It's also a really common issue going around barks, particularly the leeward bark. Guy from behind you hasn't got water on you, accidentally rams you off the backside simply because the helm isn't particularly looking at that stage, and it quite often can feel a fairly innocuous bash, but it can damage this deck to hull joint. And the deck to hull bonding paste here is Crestoma. It's this pink stuff in the middle, and for about the first 1,000 boats that were built, it was all this Crestoma, which is great. And it was great they didn't have gel painted over it, because you could actually see it. If you see cracking in this, that's actually is a weakness. It can particularly lead to the boat leaking, and there's also a structural issue. It's one of the easiest repairs for us to do as boat repairers, but if you see cracking here, I would very much want to get it sorted. And any significant damage on this lip that you can spot, again, I would quite like to get that sorted